Maria had always believed in the promises of love. When she married David, she thought she had found the man who would care for her forever. Their wedding had been small but beautiful, filled with smiles from family and neighbors. She remembered the way he held her hand and whispered sweet words, making her feel like the luckiest woman alive. But life has a way of revealing the truth when you least expect it. And for Maria, that moment came sooner than she could have imagined. At first, everything seemed normal. David took her to their modest home, and she tried her best to build a happy life with him. She cooked, cleaned, and made sure the house felt warm and welcoming. Yet, deep inside, Maria sometimes felt a strange emptiness. There were nights when David seemed distant, avoiding her gaze, and mornings when he would leave without saying a word. She brushed it off, telling herself that everyone has bad days and that love requires patience. One evening, while David was away on some work in town, Maria found a small envelope tucked into the drawer of their old wooden table. Curiosity got the better of her, and she carefully opened it. Her heart sank as she read the words that would change her life forever. The envelope contained a crumpled receipt, and on it was written, in bold letters, that she had been sold to a man named Jake, a cowboy, for $5. Her hands trembled, and the paper fell from her grip as if it were burning her fingers. She could not believe what she was reading. Her own husband had betrayed her in the most cruel and unimaginable way. Shock gave way to anger, and then to fear. Maria's mind raced. She tried to think of what she could do, but there seemed to be no easy escape. The reality of her situation weighed heavily on her. She felt like a bird trapped in a cage, powerless and alone. She had been promised love and security, yet here she was, sold like an object, with her life suddenly in the hands of a stranger. When the day came for her to leave with Jake, Maria's heart pounded in her chest. The townspeople watched in silence as she was led to the old wagon waiting outside. Her belongings were few, just a small bag with the clothes she had packed, but the weight of betrayal she carried was heavier than anything she had ever known. The air felt strange and suffocating, yet at the same time, there was a small, inexplicable spark of hope. Perhaps, she thought, life could still hold something better than this. Jake was waiting at the ranch, a tall, rugged man with sun-weathered skin and a calm demeanor. At first glance, he seemed intimidating. His eyes, however, held a depth that Maria could not ignore, a quiet kindness that seemed at odds with the harsh reputation she had heard about him. He introduced himself simply, without arrogance or judgment. "I'll take care of you," he said, his voice steady. Maria wanted to believe him, but trust did not come easily. The first days at the ranch were grueling. Maria had never worked so hard in her life. From sunrise to sunset, she tended to the animals, helped with the fields, and learned the routines of ranch life. Her hands ached, her back was sore, and the sun burned her skin. But each task also brought a strange sense of purpose. She realized that, for the first time in her life, she had to rely on herself and adapt to a new world. Fear began to mingle with resilience, and Maria discovered a strength she had never known. Jake was always nearby, observing without interfering, ready to offer guidance when necessary. He taught her how to feed the horses, mend fences, and navigate the large fields of the ranch. Maria noticed that he treated her with patience. When she made mistakes, he corrected her gently. When she struggled, he offered encouragement. Slowly, she began to see him not as the man who had bought her, but as someone who respected her efforts and her humanity. Evenings were quiet on the ranch, and it was during these moments that Maria began to understand Jake more. They would sit by the fire, sharing simple meals and talking about life. Jake spoke of his childhood on the ranch, of his dreams and struggles, and Maria listened, feeling a connection grow between them. She realized that he, too, had faced challenges, and that life had not always been easy for him. In these small conversations, trust began to take root. Despite the hardships, Maria started to regain a sense of hope. She learned to laugh again, even in small ways, and began to see possibilities beyond her immediate fear. She noticed how the animals seemed to respond to her care, how the land slowly yielded to her efforts, and how the rhythm of ranch life became something familiar and even comforting. For the first time since being sold, she felt a sense of control over her own life. Maria also began to reflect on her past, on the betrayal of her husband. Anger still lingered, but she realized that clinging to it would only keep her trapped. Instead, she focused on the present, on the people and the opportunities around her. She started to understand that life could be harsh, but it could also offer unexpected second chances. The more she worked and learned, the more she saw that her destiny was no longer tied to the man who had betrayed her. As weeks passed, Jake and Maria began to form a routine. She admired his dedication to the ranch, his integrity, and the quiet way he carried responsibility. She noticed the small ways he cared for her, making sure she had proper clothes for the work, bringing her a warm drink on cold mornings, or simply listening when she needed to speak. Maria began to understand that respect and kindness were the foundation of any real connection, far more than words or promises could ever be. One afternoon, while helping Jake mend a fence near the edge of the property, Maria slipped and injured her ankle. Panic surged through her as she realized she could not walk properly. Jake immediately came to her side, lifting her gently and carrying her to the house. He tended to her injury with careful hands, cleaning the wound and wrapping it with cloth. Maria felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. Here was a man who had every reason to see her as property, yet he treated her like a person worthy of care and concern. That night, Maria lay awake, thinking about the strange twist her life had taken. She had been sold for $5, betrayed by the one person she trusted most. Yet, in this new life, she had found someone who valued her in ways she had never known. Her heart felt heavy with the past, but also lighter with a fragile hope for the future. For the first time in a long while, Maria allowed herself to imagine a life where she could be happy again, where trust and love were possible. Days turned into weeks, and Maria's confidence grew. She worked hard, learned new skills, and began to see the ranch not just as a place of labor, but as a space where she could build a future. Jake continued to guide her, not as a master, but as a mentor and companion. Their conversations became longer, filled with laughter, shared stories, and mutual understanding. Maria realized that while her past had been painful, her present held the possibility of healing and renewal. Through it all, Maria discovered an inner strength she had never recognized before. She realized that survival was not just about enduring hardship, it was about finding meaning in each day, learning from challenges, and embracing opportunities to grow. Her journey from fear to courage, from betrayal to trust, had only just begun. The bond she was forming with Jake was not based on ownership or obligation, but on mutual respect, kindness, and a growing understanding of one another. Maria's story was one of resilience. She had been sold, humiliated, and hurt by the person she loved. Yet she refused to let that define her. Each day on the ranch brought new challenges, but also new lessons. She learned patience, endurance, and the power of quiet determination. Slowly, the darkness of her past was replaced by a light of hope, a hope that whispered that life could still hold kindness, care, and even love. And so, Maria continued her days on the ranch, never forgetting the betrayal that had brought her there, but also never letting it overshadow the new life she was building. She was learning that even in the harshest situations, humans have an incredible capacity to adapt, to survive, and to find unexpected happiness. With each passing day, she grew stronger, wiser, and more confident that her future, though uncertain, could be brighter than her past had ever been. As the days turned into months, Maria began to see her new life in a different light. The fear that had once gripped her heart began to soften, replaced by a quiet sense of security. She had learned the rhythms of the ranch, the way the animals responded to her touch, and how the land needed care and patience. Her hands were calloused, and her clothes often dusty. But with every chore completed, Maria felt a sense of accomplishment she had never known before. Life on the ranch was not easy, yet it gave her a feeling of independence and control over her destiny. Jake noticed the change in her. He admired her determination, her willingness to learn, and the gentle way she treated every living creature on the ranch. He had never expected that someone who had been through such betrayal could develop such resilience. There was a quiet respect that grew between them, one that did not need to be spoken aloud. Maria began to understand that respect and kindness were far stronger foundations than wealth or status, lessons she had never truly learned in her previous life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, casting a golden glow across the fields, Maria and Jake sat on the porch, sipping warm tea. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the simple peace of shared presence. Maria watched Jake carefully, noticing the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, and she felt a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest. She wondered if this could be the beginning of something more than just friendship and companionship. Over time, they shared more of their stories. Maria spoke of the betrayal she had endured, how her husband had sold her for $5, and the despair she had felt in those early days. She had never shared this story with anyone, not even her closest friends. But with Jake, she felt safe. He listened without judgment, offering empathy and understanding. His own past was not without hardship. He had grown up working tirelessly on the ranch after losing his parents, learning the value of hard work and honesty. Their shared understanding of struggle created a bond that grew stronger with every conversation. With the arrival of spring, the ranch became alive with activity. Animals gave birth, crops began to grow, and the once quiet land buzzed with energy. Maria found herself thriving in this environment. She rose with the sun, feeding the chickens and gathering eggs, tending to the horses, and helping Jake repair fences. Her days were long and exhausting, but she felt useful, appreciated, and most importantly, alive. She no longer thought of herself as a victim, but as someone capable of shaping her own life. One afternoon, while they were repairing a section of the fence near the creek, Maria slipped on a wet patch and fell. Jake's strong hands caught her just in time, preventing her from hitting the ground. His touch was gentle yet firm, and Maria felt a rush of gratitude and something deeper she could not name. As they worked side by side, she realized that she no longer feared him as she once might have. Instead, she trusted him completely. She saw a man who valued her as a partner, someone who could be relied upon, someone who could be loved. As the months passed, Maria and Jake's relationship continued to deepen. Their conversations became longer, filled with laughter, shared dreams, and even playful teasing. Maria found herself smiling more often, feeling lighter than she had in years. Jake, too, seemed changed. The burden he had carried as a solitary man on the ranch eased as he shared his days with someone who cared, someone who understood him. Together, they created a rhythm of life that was both comforting and joyful. One evening, during a quiet moment by the fire, Jake spoke softly. "Maria, I know you've been through a lot, but I want you to know that you are safe here. You are not property, not in my eyes, and I never will treat you that way." Maria felt a warmth spread through her chest. These words, simple as they were, meant more than she could express. She realized that safety, respect, and trust were the true gifts she had found in this new life. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that happiness was possible. Spring gave way to summer, and the ranch flourished. Maria and Jake continued to work hard, but they also began to enjoy the small pleasures of life together. They shared meals on the porch, watched sunsets over the hills, and sometimes simply sat in silence, content in each other's presence. Maria began to notice the small acts of care Jake performed, bringing her a cool drink after a long day, leaving a blanket near the fire for her in the evenings, or quietly helping with chores without being asked. These acts spoke louder than words, and Maria's admiration for him grew. One morning, as the mist lifted from the fields, Maria reflected on her journey. She had arrived at the ranch broken and fearful, sold by the man she had trusted most. Yet, in the months that followed, she had found something she never expected: freedom, respect, and the possibility of love. She realized that her husband's betrayal, though cruel, had led her to a life that was richer and more fulfilling than she could have imagined. She had been given a second chance, and she intended to make the most of it. As the year went on, Jake and Maria's bond became undeniable. They shared stories of childhood, dreams for the future, and even small fears that they had never voiced to anyone else. Maria admired Jake's strength, not just his physical ability to manage the ranch, but his patience, integrity, and quiet sense of justice. She saw in him the kind of man she had always wished for, someone who would stand by her side, not above her. One evening, as they watched the stars emerge in the clear night sky, Jake reached for Maria's hand. "I know life has not been easy for you," he said softly, "but I hope you can see that we can build something good here together." Maria looked into his eyes and felt a wave of emotion she could not contain. She realized that she had fallen in love with this man, the cowboy who had treated her with dignity and care when the world had failed her. Their relationship continued to grow, built on mutual respect and understanding. Jake never pressured her or demanded anything. Instead, he offered companionship, support, and kindness. Maria found herself smiling more freely, laughing more easily, and feeling more alive than she had in years. She had gone from being sold as a slave to discovering a life where she was valued, respected, and truly cared for. Eventually, Maria realized that she could no longer imagine her life without Jake. The ranch, which had once seemed like a place of work and uncertainty, had become her home. She had found someone who saw her worth, appreciated her efforts, and shared in the joy of everyday life. Their love was not rushed or forced. It had grown naturally, shaped by shared experiences, trust, and understanding. One quiet morning, as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jake turned to Maria with a smile. "Maria, I know life has brought us both challenges, but I want to spend my days with you. Will you be my wife?" Maria felt tears fill her eyes, a mix of joy, relief, and gratitude. She nodded, her heart overflowing with emotion. "Yes, Jake, I will," she whispered. And in that moment, she knew that she had finally found the happiness she had longed for. Their wedding was simple but filled with love. Friends from the town who had witnessed Maria's journey attended, offering congratulations and smiles. The ceremony was held on the ranch, surrounded by the fields and animals that had become a part of her life. Maria walked down a small aisle of wildflowers, feeling the weight of the past lift from her shoulders. Jake waited at the end, his eyes shining with warmth and admiration. When they exchanged vows, it was not just a promise to each other, but a celebration of resilience, hope, and the power of second chances. Maria's life had been turned upside down by betrayal, yet she had discovered something far more valuable than she could have imagined. She had found love, respect, and a true partner in Jake. Her story became a quiet inspiration to those around her, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, life can offer unexpected opportunities for happiness and growth. Maria's courage, patience, and willingness to embrace the unknown had led her to a life filled with joy and fulfillment. As they stood together on the porch, watching the sunset, Maria felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had endured hardship, heartbreak, and betrayal. Yet she had emerged stronger and wiser. She had found someone who saw her worth and treated her with the love and respect she deserved. In Jake, she had discovered not just a husband, but a true companion and friend. The past, though painful, had shaped her into the person she was meant to become, and the future, filled with love and shared dreams, looked brighter than she had ever imagined.